In the boundless night of the galaxy, amid the swirling maelstrom of stars and the silent abyss of space, there exists a truth as immutable as the throne upon terror itself. The Adeptus Custodes are not merely warriors, they are the living embodiment of the Emperor's will, unyielding, sacred, invincible. Before the myriad wars, before the shattered legions and broken empires, before the age of endless conflict known only as the 41st millennium, there was the genesis of something far older and far greater. The Custodes are the Emperor's eternal guardians, a golden host born from his own flesh and forged in the fires of purpose, destined to be the unwavering shield between mankind and annihilation. To understand the Custodes, one must first understand the Emperor, the pinnacle of human potential, the architect of the Imperium, the singular beacon of order in a galaxy drowning in chaos. It was not enough to create space marines, the towering demigods of war. The Emperor conceived a force beyond even the most exalted Astartes, warriors of unparalleled martial skill, psychic might, and genetic perfection. These were to be his personal guard, the lords of terror's defense, the arbiters of justice and judgment. More than soldiers, more than champions, custodians of humanity's very soul. Their origins are shrouded in mystery, a veil woven tightly by the centuries. Unlike the legions scattered across the stars, the Adeptus Custodes were never meant for numbers. They are few, crafted with painstaking precision, each a masterpiece of genetic engineering and arcane artifice. The Emperor's own genetic essence, harvested and distilled, became the blueprint. The process of their creation transcended science and bordered on ritual, combining biomantic manipulation, gene forging, and psychic enhancement. Each custodian was a unique vessel, a living relic of the golden age of terror. The Imperium of Man stands as a fragile colossus on the edge of oblivion, beset by traitors, Xenos, and demonic forces. Yet the Custodes endure, timeless sentinels whose duty is eternal. Their armour, gilded with auramite and adorned with sigils older than the Imperium itself, gleams with a radiance that seems to defy the darkness encroaching upon the galaxy. They move with purpose and precision, their presence commanding reverence and fear in equal measure. Every step they take echoes with the weight of millennia, every strike a testament to divine wrath. But what is the cost of such perfection? What does it mean to be unyielding when the galaxy itself is fluid and chaotic? The Custodes' immortality is not merely a blessing, it is a burden. They are bound to eternal vigilance, prisoners of their own loyalty, incapable of rest or retreat. As they stand guard over the Emperor's sanctum, they wrestle with an existential solitude, the knowledge that their purpose is endless, that their sacrifice is perpetual, and yet their story begins in the crucible of terror itself during an era of war and hope, the dawn of the Great Crusade. It is here that the Custodes first take shape, not only as warriors but as the living embodiment of order against the encroaching tides of anarchy. Their creation was not an act of whimsy, but of necessity, a shield against the forces that would tear humanity apart before it could reclaim its place among the stars. In this genesis, the Adeptus Custodes represent both the zenith of human achievement and the seed of an eternal paradox. They are the perfect guardians of a perfect order, yet they exist in a universe defined by imperfection and decay. Their shining armour casts long shadows, and within those shadows lurks the question, can anything remain unbroken when it stands forever against the darkness? This chapter will chart their origins, the ancient genetic rites and arcane sciences that birthed them, the secretive crucibles of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and the Emperor's own hand in their genesis. We will uncover how they were shaped not only as protectors, but as symbols, living icons of humanity's will to survive and dominate. The Custodes stand alone, unyielding and sacred, the final bastion of the Emperor's dream, but the question that echoes across the ages remains unanswered. In the endless war to preserve humanity's light, can even the brightest flame remain unextinguished? The Golden Age of Terror, millennia before the Imperium reached the stars, was an epoch of unparalleled scientific triumph and psychic enlightenment. In this forgotten era, the Emperor of Mankind lived and laboured in secret, an immortal genius whose knowledge surpassed that of any mortal or machine. It was during these centuries that the first seeds of the Custodes were planted. The Emperor's vision was not only of conquest but of preservation, a safeguard against the eventual unravelling of his empire. His early experiments into genetic manipulation and bioengineering were unparalleled. Whether Space Marines were forged through the genetic legacies of the Primarchs, the Custodes drew directly from the Emperor's own genome, a perfect distillation of human potential, purified through arcane and technological rites. This was no mere scientific process. It was an act of sacred creation. Within the vaults of the Imperial Palace, in hidden sanctums shielded by esoteric wards, the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Emperor's personal adepts collaborated in secret. Their goal was to craft warriors who would be infallible sentinels, towering in strength, swift in reflex and resilient beyond measure. The process was as much spiritual as it was scientific. It demanded sacrifices, rituals invoking forgotten rites, and bioforges that worked beyond the boundaries of mortal comprehension. Each custodian was grown, not cloned. While Space Marines often shared gene seed, the Custodes were unique entities, each bearing subtle variations that marked them as individual masterpieces. Their psychic potential was immense but tightly controlled, their minds forged to resist the seductive whispers of the warp. Their biological resilience was second only to their combat prowess, capable of withstanding wounds that would fell lesser men. Their senses were honed to razor precision, allowing them to perceive threats before they manifested. The Custodes' training was as grueling as their genesis. From their earliest moments, they were conditioned for eternal vigilance. Every movement, every gesture, every breath was drilled into ritual. They were scholars of war and masters of diplomacy, versed in the subtleties of imperial politics as much as the art of battle. Their loyalty to the Emperor was absolute, their discipline unwavering. The golden armour they don is not merely ceremonial. Forged from auramite, an alloy of nearly sacred provenance, it is layered with intricate runes and litanies that enhance their natural resilience and psychic defences. The iconic guardian spear they wield is both a weapon of war and a symbol of office, a fusion of advanced technology and arcane power, capable of dispatching foes with devastating efficiency. Yet the Custodes' role extended beyond mere guardianship. They were the Emperor's eyes and ears within the labyrinthine halls of the Imperial Palace and beyond. Their presence was a constant reminder of the Emperor's omnipotence and the high price of defiance. They executed judgment where imperial law faltered, meting out justice with cold precision. The Custodes were not created to wage war across countless worlds. That mantle fell to the Space Marines and the Imperial Guard. Their battlefield was terror itself, and the throne room of the Emperor. Their mission, to be the final shield, the last line of defence against the unimaginable horrors that would seek to rend the heart of the Imperium. This singular focus imbued the Custodes with a sense of sacred purpose, but it also isolated them. Unlike the sprawling legions of Astartes, the Custodes were few. Their numbers never exceeded a few thousand, and with time dwindled further. Their exclusivity bred an aloofness, a separation from the galaxy they were sworn to protect. This exclusivity became both their strength and their weakness. Philosophically, the Adeptus Custodes embody the paradox of perfection and permanence in a universe defined by entropy and decay. Their immortality is a double-edged sword. It allows them to endure, to witness the rise and fall of empires, but it also condemns them to eternal solitude and ceaseless vigilance. As the centuries stretch onward, their unchanging presence becomes a mirror reflecting the slow rot of the Imperium itself, and yet their existence is not static. The Custodes have evolved in doctrine and in spirit, responding to the shifting tides of galactic history. But their foundation, the sacred bond to the Emperor, the divine mandate to protect terror, remains unbroken. As we begin this exploration into the Adeptus Custodes, we face the profound question that underpins their entire being. What does it mean to be unyielding, sacred, and invincible in a galaxy where all else is fleeting, corruptible, and lost? Their story is a testament to the human will's capacity for both greatness and sacrifice, a luminous thread in the tapestry of a grim, dark future. And yet, this illumination casts shadows that hint at future trials, at betrayals yet unseen, at fractures yet to come. The Custodes are eternal, but what if eternal vigilance itself becomes a prison? What if their sacred duty blinds them to the greater darkness beyond the walls they guard? These questions will follow us as the saga unfolds, from the dawn of their creation, through the fires of the Great Crusade, to the shattering cataclysm of the Horus Heresy, and beyond. The Adeptus Custodes are not just guardians of a throne, they are guardians of a legacy that may yet decide the fate of all mankind. From the shadowed depths of the Imperial Palace's most secret sanctuaries to the alchemical forges of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Adeptus Custodes were not born of chance nor forged in haste. Their genesis was a meticulous symphony of science, sorcery, and sacred will, a process as deliberate as it was arcane. To comprehend the Golden Host's rise from the Emperor's vision to a tangible force of unassailable power, we must delve into the crucible where flesh, spirit, and technology converged, shaping the ultimate guardians of humanity. The early growth of the Custodes was inseparable from the vast machinery of the Imperium's genetic and technological might. While the Space Marines, the Emperor's Primarch-born warriors, were numerous, mass-produced through gene seed replication and indoctrination, the Custodes stood apart. Each was a unique masterpiece, a singular synthesis of the Emperor's own genetic grandeur and the secret rites of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Their formation was not replication but creation, a bespoke melding of flesh and machine, born for singular purpose. The process began within the vaults of terror, in chambers bathed in sacred light and shielded by wards that bent the laws of physics and warp alike. Here, the Emperor's personal tech priests, bound by oaths older than the Imperium itself, conducted bioarcane rites that defied mortal comprehension. The Custodes were grown in living biocrystals and incubators suffused with Stygian energies, their DNA carefully manipulated to enhance every attributes: strength, reflex, cognition, psychic resistance, and regenerative capability. Unlike the Space Marines' gene seed, which was adapted and shared, the Custodes bore gene patterns derived directly from the Emperor, purified through countless iterative processes. But this genetic engineering was only one facet. Their physical forms were augmented through surgical enhancements and symbiotic implants, often considered arcane by even the highest tech priests. Their nervous systems were reinforced with adamantium filaments, their musculature interlaced with synthetic fibers stronger than the most advanced ceramics. These augmentations granted superhuman agility and endurance, transforming them into living weapons of unparalleled precision and resilience. Psychic conditioning was no less exacting. The Custodes were trained to wield latent psychic potential, not as wild tempest, but as a focused blade. Their minds were shielded with psychic wards etched into their very synapses, allowing them to resist the corrosive influence of the warp, the chaotic realm of demons and malevolent entities that gnaws at the soul of mankind. This resistance made them near immune to possession and corruption, elevating their status as unbreakable sentinels. The forging of a custodian was also a spiritual endeavour. Each aspirant was immersed in rites of passage designed to instill an unshakable devotion to the Emperor and their sacred duty. From their first breath, Custodes learned to suppress individual desire beneath the weight of collective responsibility. They were not warriors in pursuit of glory, but living relics, embodiments of duty, discipline, and sacrifice. Their identities were intertwined with ritualistic disciplines, prayers whispered in the forgotten tongues of terror, meditations on the nature of order and chaos, and ceremonies commemorating ancient battles. The Custodes culture was unique, even within the Imperium's kaleidoscope of martial orders. Their brotherhood was not measured by numbers but by the strength of their shared oath. Unlike the Space Marines, who were legionnaires and commanders of vast armies, the Custodes served as an elite cadre of sovereign knights, each bearing a burden as heavy as the imperial throne itself. Their bonds were forged through trials of combat and loyalty, their interactions steeped in solemn respect rather than camaraderie. They were peers, judges, and sometimes executioners of one another, maintaining order within their own ranks as mercilessly as they enforced it without. The Golden Host's early duties reflected their sacred mandate. They were the Emperor's personal shield, guardians of the Imperial Palace, protectors of the throne, and the living bulwark against threats that even the mightiest armies dared not face directly. Their presence was a deterrent as much as a weapon, their silent vigilance a constant reminder of the Emperor's reach and authority. They patrolled the gilded halls and ancient chambers of terror, ever watchful for assassins, conspirators, and warp-touched interlopers. The Custodes' relationship with the Adeptus Mechanicus was both symbiotic and fraught. The Mechanicus provided the arcane technology and genetic expertise necessary for their creation and maintenance, while the Custodes ensured the preservation of the Imperium's heart from threats, both technological and psychic. This uneasy alliance was marked by mutual respect but underscored by suspicion. The Mechanicus guarded their secrets jealously, and the Custodes regarded the tech priests with wary reverence, mindful of the heresies that lurked in unregulated knowledge. Despite their near-divine status, the Custodes remained bound by the same strictures of imperial law and tradition that governed the rest of humanity. Their actions were overseen by the High Lords of Terror, though in many ways their power surpassed that of any mortal institution. Their judgments were final, their authority unquestioned. Yet this power demanded restraint. They were neither conquerors nor tyrants, but custodians, guardians of a fragile legacy. The Custodes' armaments and armour were as emblematic as their purpose. The auramite plate that encased them was a marvel of imperial engineering, a living artifact infused with energy fields and psychically resonant glyphs. It was lighter than it appeared, yet capable of withstanding the mightiest weapons of the age. Their signature Guardian spear combined elegant craftsmanship with brutal functionality, a weapon that could both cleave through armoured foes and unleash devastating energy discharges. Each Custodian's gear was customised, reflecting not only function, but the rights and honours bestowed upon them. Training was a lifelong ordeal. Custodes practiced combat forms that blended martial disciplines lost to time, combining the grace of ancient warriors with the lethality of modern tactics. They were schooled in every conceivable weapon system, from blade and spear to ranged firearms enhanced with rare materials and forbidden technologies. Their reflexes were honed to a razor's edge, their tactical minds sharpened through simulated campaigns and philosophical study. This relentless preparation was vital. In their ranks, every failure could be fatal. Yet, this relentless pursuit of perfection bred a paradoxical isolation. The Custodes were bound to their sacred duty and their brotherhood, but their path left little room for kinship beyond their order. Unlike the Space Marines who led armies and forged bonds across worlds, the Custodes existed as solitary sentinels, estranged by their very excellence. Their immortality extended beyond the battlefield, casting them into centuries of silent vigil and ceaseless duty. The loneliness of immortality became their hidden enemy. Moreover, the Custodes' exclusivity meant that their numbers were few, perhaps numbering only a few thousand at their zenith. Such scarcity underscored the weight each bore. Every Custodian was irreplaceable, and every loss was a wound to the Golden Host's very soul. This scarcity would become a defining feature, ensuring their role remained one of elite guardianship rather than battlefield generals. As the Great Crusade dawned, this Golden Host was poised to serve not as frontline warriors but as the Emperor's incorruptible shield. Their mandate was singular: protect the Imperium's heart at all costs, maintain the sanctity of the throne world, and embody the Emperor's divine will. This sacred duty would propel them into the shadowed halls of power and the blazing crucibles of war, shaping the destiny of mankind's greatest empire. And yet, beneath this veneer of perfection and purpose, subtle fissures began to form. The Custodes' isolation fostered suspicion, both of outsiders and of their own brethren. The relentless pressure of eternal vigilance exacted an unseen toll. Questions arose in whispered tones. Could an order so exalted remain untainted by hubris? Would their sacred role bind them to a fate of stagnation rather than evolution? The very attributes that made them invincible could also imprison them. This chapter of formation is not merely about the forging of warriors, but about the birth of a paradox. The Custodes as living icons of order and discipline, yet also as prisoners of their own perfection. They stand as the Emperor's shield, unbreakable and eternal, but also as a mirror to the fragility of the Imperium itself. Their story is not only one of growth and glory, but of looming questions, shadowed doubts, and the price of greatness. As the Great Crusade blazed across the stars, the Custodes awaited, silent, vigilant, ready to enact their sacred charge. But the galaxy into which they stepped was anything but ordered. Darkness lurked on every frontier, and the shadows of betrayal and war would soon stretch even to the Imperial Palace itself. What role would the Golden Host play as the Imperium expanded? Could their sacred mandate adapt to a changing galaxy? Or would their perfection become their undoing? These questions will shape the unfolding saga, a saga of unyielding guardianship, sacred duty, and invincible will. In the vast cosmic theatre of the Great Crusade, when the Emperor's vision sought to reclaim a fractured humanity scattered among the stars, the Adeptus Custodes stood not as mere spectators, but as indispensable actors. They were the Emperor's right hand, silent, swift, and absolute, embodiments of a sacred trust that transcended the ordinary bounds of war and politics. Their presence was not confined to the gilded halls of terror, but extended across the burgeoning Imperium, where they executed the Emperor's will with unerring precision. Yet, even as their legend grew, the Custodes grappled with the complex dynamics of power, loyalty, and isolation amid the crucible of galactic conquest. The Great Crusade was an epoch of relentless expansion, where the Emperor's legions surged forth to reunite humanity's lost worlds under a single banner. While the Primarchs and their Space Marine legions commanded vast armies in brutal campaigns of reclamation, the Custodes operated in a sphere apart, not commanders of legions but the Emperor's direct agents. Their missions ranged from surgical strikes against high-level threats to the protection of key Imperial assets and individuals. In the theatre of war and politics, they were executors of ultimate authority, often sent where subtlety and lethality were required in equal measure. Their unparalleled combat skill was the stuff of legends. The Custodes moved with a grace and speed that belied their towering forms and ornate armour. Their weapons, especially the iconic Guardian Spear, combined ancient craftsmanship with devastating power. In battle, they were not simply soldiers. They were storms of precision and fury, able to dismantle entire enemy formations with swift, decisive blows. These warriors were tempered in countless battles against Xenos aggressors, internal rebellions, and the first shadows of chaos that crept through the galaxy. Their combat doctrine was a reflection of their philosophy. No engagement was to be prolonged, no waste tolerated. Victory was to be absolute, swift, and unchallenged. The Custodes' relationship with the Space Marines was complex and nuanced. On one hand, the Space Marines were the Emperor's chosen generals, and the legions that waged the Crusades' vast wars. On the other, the Custodes were the Emperor's personal guardians and enforcers, wielding authority that even the mightiest Primarchs respected. This duality created both cooperation and tension. The Custodes often accompanied Primarchs on critical missions or acted as impartial adjudicators during disputes, their presence a stark reminder of the Emperor's ultimate supremacy. Yet, their aloofness and singular focus sometimes bred resentment among the Space Marines, who saw them as distant, enigmatic, and beyond the camaraderie of the battlefield. The Custodes also played a critical role in intelligence and counter-subversion. Their psychic resistance and keen perception made them ideal operatives to root out hidden threats. Spies, assassins, and cultists who sought to undermine the Emperor's grand design. They moved silently through court intrigues and battlefield chaos alike, wielding judgment where lesser agencies faltered. Their authority was rarely questioned, for they answered only to the Emperor himself. As the Crusade advanced, the Custodes bore witness to the growing complexities of the Imperium. The sprawling empire was more than a military conquest. It was a delicate web of politics, religion, and power. The Custodes' influence extended beyond martial might into these shadowed realms. They guarded sacred relics, oversaw the sanctity of the Imperial Palace, and ensured the High Lord's decrees were enforced. Their judgment was swift and final, acting as the Emperor's unyielding will incarnate. Yet this elevated position did not shield them from the growing fractures within the Imperium. The Crusades' triumphs were shadowed by dissent, mistrust, and the ominous rise of chaos. The Custodes found themselves not only battling external enemies, but also struggling to preserve internal cohesion. Their near-immortal lifespans made them guardians not only of the Emperor, but of a fragile order constantly under siege from within. The siege of terror, looming in the distance, was still beyond the horizon, but the first tremors of betrayal were felt even during the Crusade. The Custodes' vigilance became ever more critical as the seeds of the Horus heresy took root. They stood as the Emperor's sentinels, watching the Primarchs and legions whose loyalty would soon be tested. Their role as impartial guardians was to enforce order, but the coming betrayal would force them into bitter combat against those they once called brothers. The Custodes' presence on the battlefield during the Great Crusade was often symbolic as much as strategic. Their arrival on a warfront signalled the Emperor's direct interest and was a demoralising omen to foes and allies alike. They acted as living icons of imperial resolve, their shining armour and unyielding discipline inspiring awe and fear. To encounter a custodian was to face the embodiment of the Emperor's wrath, swift, merciless, and absolute. Despite their exalted status, the Custodes did not seek glory. Their victories were measured not in conquest, but in the preservation of order. They were the Emperor's unblinking eyes, the final enforcers of his law. Their missions were often solitary or small-scale, surgical interventions designed to root out corruption, sabotage, or rebellion before it could spread. This role made them as much judges as warriors, tasked with balancing mercy and justice in a galaxy where chaos was ever encroaching. The Golden Host's influence also extended into the spiritual realm. Custodes were custodians of ancient rites and sacred relics, preserving traditions that linked humanity to its forgotten past. They performed ceremonies that strengthened the Emperor's psychic presence on Terra, reinforcing the spiritual backbone of the Imperium. This blending of martial prowess and ritual underscored the Custodes' unique position. Neither mere soldiers nor priests, but something beyond both. However, their singular focus and elevated purpose created an inevitable gulf between the Custodes and other Imperial forces. While Space Marines engaged directly with the sprawling chaos of the galaxy, the Custodes remained tethered to the Emperor's side, their actions dictated by an ancient, unchanging code. This detachment fostered isolation and a sense of detachment. They were often seen as aloof, enigmatic figures who embodied ideals that few could comprehend. As the Great Crusade pressed forward, the Custodes' vigilance became a beacon amid encroaching darkness. Yet even their unparalleled discipline could not prevent the approaching storm. The shadows of treachery, rebellion, and corruption began to weave their deadly patterns. The Custodes' sacred duty, to guard the Emperor and maintain order, would soon be tested as never before. Their story during the Great Crusade is one of both glory and foreboding, of unyielding loyalty and the dawning realization that the greatest threats might come not from without, but from within. Their role as the Emperor's right hand was more than a title. It was a burden heavy with consequence and sacrifice. The Custodes remained watchful, their golden eyes fixed upon the future, their blades ready to strike. They stood as eternal sentinels on the precipice of a galaxy on the verge of devastation. Their unwavering presence was a final hope and a solemn warning. The Great Crusade's triumph was not eternal, and the Custodes knew this all too well. The Emperor's right hand was strong, but the darkness gathering beyond the stars was stronger still, and so, as the Legends Astartes marched to war across countless worlds, the Golden Host stood resolute, unyielding, sacred, and invincible. But even the mightiest guardians cannot foresee the betrayals to come. The world of Terra, the throne planet of the Imperium and the nexus of mankind's vast empire, pulses beneath the eternal vigilance of the Adeptus Custodes. It is here, amid the towering spires of the Imperial Palace and the labyrinthine corridors of ancient stone and ceramite, that the Custodes find their greatest purpose, not merely as warriors, but as the ultimate guardians of a fragile civilization teetering on the edge of oblivion. Their role transcends the battlefield. It is a sacred charge to preserve the Emperor's will, to enforce order, and to safeguard the very heart of humanity's dominion. The Imperial Palace is more than a fortress. It is a sprawling citadel of mystery and power, a place where millennia of history and technology intertwine. The Custodes patrol its endless halls with unyielding discipline, their presence a constant reminder of the Emperor's unbreakable will. Their duties encompass the protection of the Golden Throne itself, a device of unimaginable complexity and psychic resonance that sustains the Emperor's withered but immortal form. They are charged with preventing any harm from befalling this sacred relic, understanding that the fate of the Imperium is bound irrevocably to the Emperor's survival. The Custodes' influence within the political and religious spheres of the Imperium is subtle but profound. Though their numbers are few, their authority surpasses that of many imperial institutions. They serve as executors of the High Lords of Terror's will, often acting with a degree of autonomy born from necessity. Their judgments on matters of security and justice within the palace grounds are final, and their interventions are swift and uncompromising. This authority extends even to the Inquisition and the Adeptus Mechanicus, factions whose power is immense but often fragmented. The Custodes' allegiance to the Emperor places them above the petty squabbles of mortal men, though it also embroils them in the shadowy intrigues that simmer beneath the surface of imperial governance. Despite their power, the Custodes maintain a code of restraint and purpose. They are not tyrants or rulers, but protectors, custodians of a sacred trust. Their loyalty to the Emperor and the Imperium is absolute, yet they understand that their actions must serve the greater good rather than personal ambition. This sense of duty manifests in their interactions with other imperial factions, where they often serve as mediators, enforcers, or silent watchers. Their presence can quell unrest before it erupts, their silent vigilance a deterrent to conspirators and rebels. Within the imperial palace, the Custodes guard not only the Emperor but also priceless relics, arcane artifacts, and ancient technologies that are vital to the Imperium's survival. They oversee the security of the Adeptus Mechanicus research vaults, the sanctuaries of the ecclesiarchy, and the chambers where the most secretive councils convene. Their knowledge of these matters is vast yet closely held, shared only among their own ranks and select trusted allies. This guardianship places them at the centre of the Imperium's spiritual and technological lifeblood. Their role as arbiters of justice is equally significant. The Custodes are often called upon to investigate breaches of security, root out treason, and execute judgment upon those deemed threats to the Emperor's vision. Their methods are efficient and merciless. They do not tolerate failure or leniency where the Imperium's future is at stake. Trials may be swift, sentences final. This stern justice serves as a foundation for order within the palace, but also fuels fear and speculation among those who dwell within its shadowed halls. The Custodes' unique status means that few truly understand their culture and motives. Their isolation from broader imperial society fosters both reverence and suspicion. While Space Marines may be known and celebrated across the Imperium's countless worlds, the Custodes remain enigmatic figures, their faces hidden behind gilded helmets, their voices seldom heard beyond the palace walls. This mystique enhances their authority, but also deepens the gulf between them and the rest of humanity. Their number is deliberately small, a reflection of their exclusivity and the immense resources required to create and sustain each custodian. This scarcity means that every loss is keenly felt, and every member is expected to embody the highest standards of excellence. The Custodes are not a legion, but a sacred brotherhood, each a living icon of the Emperor's will and humanity's resilience. Their presence is a constant reassurance to some, an ominous warning to others. Beyond their martial and administrative duties, the Custodes serve as the Emperor's eternal witnesses. Their extended lifespans allow them to remember the ages long past and to guard the secrets of the Imperium's foundation. This longevity carries a burden of memory and perspective, a reminder that the empire they protect is both ancient and fragile. They stand as living links to the past, tasked with preserving not only the physical safety of Terra, but also the spiritual and cultural continuity of mankind. Their relationship with the Space Marines during this period is complex and evolving. While the legions wage war across the galaxy, the Custodes remain the steadfast sentinels of the Emperor's seat of power. They monitor the actions of the legions with a mixture of respect and caution, aware that the loyalty of even the greatest warriors can falter. The shadows of betrayal begin to lengthen, and the Custodes' vigilance becomes ever more critical. The Custodes also maintain close ties with the Adeptus Mechanicus, sharing mutual interests in the preservation of technology and the protection of Terra's sacred knowledge. Yet this alliance is marked by a delicate balance of power, as the Mechanicus guards its secrets jealously, and the Custodes assert their supremacy within the palace. Their interactions are characterized by mutual respect, occasional tension, and an understanding that their shared goals require cooperation despite differences. As the Imperium expands, the Custodes' role becomes increasingly vital and yet more precarious. Their duty to the Emperor demands eternal vigilance, but the forces arrayed against the Imperium grow ever more cunning and relentless. Within the palace walls they are guardians of the throne and judges of those who seek to undermine it. Beyond those walls, their influence is felt through the maintenance of order and the subtle enforcement of the Emperor's will. The paradox of the Custodes lies in their immense power coupled with profound isolation. They are warriors without armies, judges without courts, and guardians without respite. Their sacred charge elevates them above most mortals, yet it also confines them within the gilded cage of eternal duty. This tension shapes their culture and defines their existence. The Custodes' influence on the Imperium's culture is subtle, but enduring. They represent an ideal of perfection and sacrifice that few can attain, embodying the Emperor's vision of humanity's destiny. Their existence inspires awe and devotion among the faithful, yet their aloofness also fosters fear and misunderstanding. They are icons of stability in a galaxy beset by chaos, yet their very perfection sets them apart from the flawed beings they protect. As the shadow of the Horus heresy approaches, the Custodes' role as guardians of terror becomes ever more critical. Their unwavering loyalty and unparalleled martial prowess are the last bulwark against the forces that would tear the Imperium asunder. Their vigilance and judgment will be tested in the crucible of betrayal and war, where the fate of humanity hangs in the balance. In this era, the Adeptus Custodes stand as the ultimate guardians of terror, unyielding in their duty, sacred in their purpose, and invincible in their resolve. They are the Emperor's eternal shield, the living embodiment of order amid chaos, and the last hope of an empire on the brink. Yet, even their vigilance cannot guarantee salvation. The storm gathers, and the true test of the Custodes' legacy awaits beyond the horizon. The Adeptus Custodes stand apart not only through their martial prowess and sacred charge, but also through a culture, doctrine, and technology that weave together to create warriors unlike any other in the Imperium. Their existence is a symphony of discipline, tradition, and cutting-edge science, a fusion of ancient rites and advanced technology that embodies the Emperor's vision of perfection. To understand the Custodes fully, one must look beyond their gleaming armor and lethal weapons to the intricate code that governs their every thought, action, and breath. At the heart of custodian culture lies an unbreakable devotion to duty and loyalty. From their creation, they are instilled with a profound understanding of their role as the Emperor's eternal guardians. This loyalty is not born of blind obedience, but forged through ritual, meditation, and shared experience. They view themselves as custodians of humanity's survival, holding the weight of millennia on their shoulders. Individual desires, ambitions, and fears are subsumed beneath the collective will to protect and serve. This unity of purpose creates a bond deeper than kinship, a brotherhood defined by sacrifice and honor. Their culture is rich in ritual and symbolism. Every action, from combat to repose, is framed by rites that reinforce their sacred mission. The Custodes are practitioners of a lost art, blending martial discipline with spiritual reflection. They recite litanies of protection, perform ceremonial cleansings of their armor and weapons, and engage in quiet meditation to sharpen their minds and spirits. These rituals serve as a bulwark against corruption, both psychic and moral, ensuring that the Custodes remain pure in purpose and untainted by the chaos that gnaws at the Imperium. Hierarchy within the Custodes is subtle, yet strict. Unlike the sprawling command structures of the Space Marines, their order is defined by merit, experience, and ritual rank. The Captain General stands at the apex, a figure both revered and feared, embodying the unity and authority of the Golden Host. Beneath him, Custodes serve in specialized roles, from battle leaders and strategists to wardens of sacred knowledge and ritual specialists. This structure ensures that the order functions with precise efficiency, every custodian aware of his place and responsibility. Doctrinally, the Custodes adhere to a philosophy that marries pragmatism with sacred duty. They are warriors, yes, but their combat is measured and precise, not reckless or indulgent. Their doctrine emphasizes rapid, overwhelming strikes designed to end conflicts swiftly and decisively. Prolonged engagements or unnecessary slaughter are anathema to their code. This approach reflects their broader philosophy, to preserve order through calculated force, to serve as instruments of the Emperor's will rather than agents of chaos or passion. Their combat training is exhaustive and multifaceted. Custodes master a wide array of weapons and martial disciplines, from the lethal elegance of the Guardian spear to the devastating power of their specialized firearms. They are skilled in unarmed combat, stealth tactics, and psychic defense. Their physical conditioning is pushed beyond the limits of normal humans, enhanced by their unique biology and augmentations. Yet, despite their overwhelming capabilities, they train with humility and respect, understanding that perfection is a journey, not a destination. Technologically, the Custodes are the beneficiaries of some of the Imperium's most advanced and secretive developments. Their armour, crafted from auramite, is a masterpiece of engineering, resilient beyond compare, imbued with energy fields and psychic wards that protect against the myriad threats of the battlefield. This armour is not only defensive but also enhances their physical capabilities, allowing for feats of strength, speed, and endurance that seem superhuman. Each suit is custom-fitted and maintained with painstaking care, regarded as both a tool of war and a sacred relic. Their weapons are similarly exceptional. The Guardian Spear is the symbol of their order, a fusion of finely honed blade and advanced technology capable of channeling potent energy discharges. It embodies the Custodes' dual nature as both elegant duelists and unstoppable warriors. Additionally, Custodes wield specialized ranged weapons, designed to punch through the toughest armor and disrupt psychic assaults. These tools reflect a balance of tradition and innovation, mirroring the Custodes' broader philosophy. Medical and regenerative technologies augment the Custodes' natural resilience. Their biology allows rapid healing far beyond normal human limits, aided by advanced biotech implants and nano-augmentation. These enhancements ensure that a custodian can return to the fray even after grievous wounds, sustaining the continuous vigilance required of their order. However, their immortality is not absolute. Death remains a rare but possible fate, and every fallen custodian is mourned as a loss to the Imperium's soul. The Custodes' psychic capabilities are among their most guarded secrets. Unlike the unpredictable and often dangerous powers wielded by other psykers, Custodes harness their psychic potential with discipline and precision. They use these abilities defensively and strategically, to shield themselves and others from warp-based attacks, to enhance their perception, and to disrupt enemy psykers. Their minds are fortified against corruption, allowing them to function as bulwarks against the insidious influence of chaos. Philosophically, the Custodes embody the tension between individuality and unity. While each custodian is unique, a living work of art and science, their identity is inseparable from the collective. They sacrifice personal ambition for the greater good, recognizing that their power is a tool of preservation rather than domination. This balance is delicate, and throughout history, moments of doubt and conflict have tested their order. Yet their culture's resilience lies in its capacity to absorb these tensions and maintain focus on the Emperor's sacred charge. The Custodes' code also reflects a profound awareness of the Imperium's fragility. They understand that their role is not merely to fight external enemies, but to guard against the slow decay of humanity's spirit and order. Their vigilance extends to preventing heresy, corruption, and the insidious rot of despair. This broader mission places them at the nexus of martial, spiritual, and political realms, making them unique among the Imperium's myriad factions. Their isolation, however, comes with cost. The Custodes are often regarded with a mixture of reverence and fear by other Imperial forces. Their aloofness and secrecy create distance, and their relentless perfection can inspire envy or suspicion. They remain outsiders, even within an empire defined by war and loyalty. This solitude shapes their worldview, fostering a stoicism and solemnity that permeates their culture. Yet, despite this isolation, the Custodes are not static relics. Their doctrine and technology have evolved in response to the changing tides of war and politics. They incorporate new knowledge when it serves their purpose, blending tradition with innovation to maintain their edge. This adaptability ensures that they remain relevant as the galaxy plunges deeper into darkness. The Custodes' enduring legacy lies in this synthesis of culture, doctrine, and technology. They are not merely warriors, but the living embodiment of an ideal, a perfect balance of strength, wisdom, and devotion. Their code demands sacrifice without question, vigilance without pause, and excellence without compromise. This chapter reveals that to be custodian is to accept a life of eternal service bound by sacred duty and relentless discipline. Their perfection is a beacon and a burden, their power a tool wielded with solemn care. They are the Emperor's shield against chaos, the guardians of order in a universe defined by entropy. Yet, As the Imperium faces its darkest hours, the Custodes' code will be tested as never before. Their unwavering resolve will collide with forces that seek not only to destroy, but to corrupt and unravel the very foundations they protect. The balance of their culture, doctrine, and technology will determine whether the Golden Host can endure, or whether even they can fall to the shadows creeping ever closer. For centuries, the Adeptus Custodes stood as the impervious guardians of the Emperor's throne, an unyielding bastion against the chaos that threatened to consume humanity's fragile empire. Yet even this golden shield, forged in perfection and bound by sacred duty, was not immune to fracture. The era leading to the Horus heresy revealed subtle cracks, shadows of doubt, fractures of loyalty, and the beginnings of change that would test the very foundations of the Custodes' sacred charge. These cracks, hidden beneath layers of ritual and discipline, heralded a tumultuous epoch that would reshape the Imperium and its eternal guardians. The Great Crusade, while a grand enterprise of conquest and reunification, exposed the Imperium to unprecedented strain. The vast scale of conflict and the mingling of countless cultures, technologies, and ideologies bred complexity and tension. The Custodes, bound to the Emperor and the throne world of terror, found themselves confronted with challenges that transcended simple martial might. The Order's isolation, once a source of strength, became a liability as distant events unfolded beyond their immediate reach. Amidst the triumphant campaigns of the Legion's Astartes, whispers of dissent began to echo. Some Primarchs questioned the Emperor's vision, others chafed beneath the rigid structure of Imperial command. The Custodes, ever vigilant, watched with measured concern but little direct intervention. Their mandate was clear: protect terror, enforce the Emperor's will, and avoid entanglement in the sprawling chaos of galactic politics. Yet, the tides of heresy surged ever closer, and the Custodes' limited numbers and focus strained under the growing storm. One of the most profound catalysts for change was the growing influence of the Warmaster Horus. His charisma and military genius unified many legions, but his eventual fall to chaos fractured the Imperium's unity. The Custodes sensed the shifting balance but were constrained by their duties and the need for absolute loyalty. Their role as impartial guardians placed them in a precarious position, forced to navigate a web of deception and treachery that threatened to engulf even the Emperor's closest allies. The seeds of the Horus heresy were sown in secret, whispers in the shadows, forbidden pacts, and insidious corruption. The Custodes, with their heightened perception and psychic resistance, detected anomalies and breaches of trust, but were often hampered by political constraints and the vast scale of the Imperium. Their vigilance was relentless, yet even they could not prevent the catastrophic betrayal that would erupt with devastating consequences. Within the Imperial Palace, the Custodes faced internal challenges as well. The proximity to power bred tension and suspicion. Not all Custodes shared identical views on the unfolding crisis. Some advocated for aggressive intervention, while others counselled caution and adherence to tradition. These disagreements, though subtle and carefully managed, revealed fissures within the Golden Host itself. The Order's cohesion was tested by the enormity of the threat and the complexity of loyalties. The Horus heresy itself marked a turning point. The Custodes found themselves thrust into direct combat against former allies and the very legions they once served alongside. The Siege of Terror was a crucible that demanded every ounce of their strength, skill, and resolve. They fought with relentless fury, defending the Emperor's throne against the forces of treason and chaos. Yet, even as they triumphed, the cost was staggering. The Imperium's foundations were shaken, and the Custodes' sacred duty became both more vital and more burdened than ever. The heresy also forced the Custodes to confront their own limitations, their small numbers, their detachment from broader imperial affairs, and their reliance on tradition became liabilities in a galaxy descending into chaos. The scale and ferocity of the conflict demanded adaptability, cooperation, and sometimes harsh compromise. These challenges would shape the Custodes' evolution in the centuries that followed. Following the heresy, the Custodes assumed a renewed and expanded role. The shattered Imperium required guardians not only of terror, but of the Emperor's legacy across the stars. Their vigilance extended into new realms, their duties grew heavier, and their methods evolved. The Golden Host became both a symbol of hope and a reminder of the fragile balance between order and destruction. Yet, the trauma of betrayal and war left lasting scars. The Custodes grappled with profound questions about loyalty, sacrifice, and the nature of their sacred charge. The heresy revealed that even the most perfect guardians were not immune to doubt and conflict. It challenged the Order to redefine itself, to embrace change without forsaking its core principles. This period also saw increased tension between the Custodes and other Imperial factions. The Imperium's political landscape shifted, and the Custodes' authority was sometimes questioned or resented. Their aloofness, once a source of mystique and respect, became a barrier to cooperation. Nevertheless, the Custodes remained steadfast, recognizing that their mission transcended mortal disputes. The cracks that appeared during this era were not signs of weakness, but indicators of transformation. The Custodes faced the harsh reality that eternal vigilance required not only strength, but wisdom and adaptability. Their sacred charge demanded a balance between tradition and innovation, between isolation and engagement. As the Imperium entered its long era of stagnation and decay, the Custodes stood as enduring symbols of unyielding loyalty and sacred duty. Their role became more than guardianship. They were the keepers of humanity's fragile flame against the encroaching darkness. Yet, even as they upheld this charge, the shadows of doubt and change lingered. The golden shield had been cracked but not shattered. The Adeptus Custodes survived the crucible of betrayal and war, emerging, tempered yet wary. Their story in this turbulent era is one of resilience and adaptation, of sacred purpose challenged by the realities of a fracturing empire. And yet, questions remained unanswered. Could the Custodes reconcile their ancient traditions with the evolving threats of the galaxy? Would their sacred charge endure in the face of relentless chaos and decay? These uncertainties would shape the chapters to come, as the Custodes navigate a universe defined by conflict, betrayal, and the enduring struggle for survival. The Horus Heresy was the darkest hour of the Imperium, a cataclysmic civil war that threatened to unravel the very fabric of humanity's empire. At the centre of this maelstrom stood the Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's personal guardians, whose vigilance and martial might were pushed to the breaking point. The heresy was not merely a conflict of armies, but a betrayal of ideals, a fracturing of loyalty, and a test of the Custodes' sacred duty that would leave an indelible mark on their legacy. From the earliest days of the rebellion, the Custodes recognized the gravity of the threat. Horus, once the favoured son and warmaster, had succumbed to the seductive whispers of chaos, turning legions of loyal space marines into instruments of treason and destruction. The Custodes, bound by unyielding loyalty to the Emperor, found themselves standing against former comrades, their blades clashing with the finest warriors humanity had ever known. This internal war was unprecedented in scale and ferocity, forcing the Golden Host into a brutal crucible of loyalty and survival. The Custodes' presence on Terra during the siege was pivotal. As traitor legions descended upon the Imperial Palace, the Golden Host became the Emperor's last line of defence. Their combat prowess and unbreakable discipline were instrumental in repelling assaults that would have crushed lesser defenders. Every custodian fought with a fury born of sacred purpose, their guardian spears and auramite armour carving a path through the legions of heretics. The Custodes' ability to move swiftly and strike decisively turned the tide in many crucial engagements, buying time for the Emperor's plans and the loyalist forces to rally. Yet, the siege also revealed the limits of even the most formidable warriors. The Custodes' numbers were few compared to the vast armies arrayed against them. The scale of the rebellion and the ferocity of chaos forces demanded allies, but trust was a fragile commodity in this war. The Custodes worked alongside loyalist space marines, the Sisters of Silence, and other Imperial forces, but the battlefield was a complex and shifting arena where loyalties could be tested and broken. The psychological burden on the Custodes during the heresy was immense. They were forced to confront the painful reality that those they once considered brothers had become enemies. This betrayal struck at the core of their identity as guardians of humanity's future. Their resolve was hardened, but the cost was profound. The losses they suffered were not merely casualties of war, but wounds to the soul of their order. The Emperor himself fought alongside the Custodes during the final battle against Horus, aboard the traitor flagship, the Vengeful Spirit. This confrontation was the climax of the heresy and a testament to the Golden Host's unwavering loyalty. The Custodes shielded the Emperor, clearing a path through the traitor warlords and demons, their actions pivotal in enabling the Emperor to face Horus alone. The outcome of this duel shaped the Imperium's future, but the victory was Pyrrhic. The Emperor was grievously wounded, confined to the Golden Throne, and the Imperium forever altered. In the aftermath, the Custodes assumed an even more critical role. With the Emperor's physical form incapacitated and the Imperium fractured, the Golden Host became the sacred guardians not only of the Emperor but of the Imperial Order itself. They fortified Terra, protected the Golden Throne, and ensured the continuity of Imperial governance amid chaos and decay. Their presence was a beacon of stability in an empire teetering on collapse. However, the heresy also forced introspection within the Custodes. The war had revealed vulnerabilities, both in their numbers and in their rigid adherence to tradition. Questions arose about how to adapt to a galaxy forever changed by betrayal and ruin. The need to balance their sacred duty with pragmatic responses to new threats became apparent. This tension would influence their evolution in the millennia that followed. The Custodes' role during the heresy also deepened the chasm between them and other imperial institutions. Their elevated status and direct allegiance to the Emperor placed them above many factions but also isolated them. While they fought alongside loyalist forces, their aloofness and strict code sometimes bred mistrust or resentment. This separation underscored the unique and often solitary nature of their existence. Despite these challenges, the Custodes emerged from the heresy as symbols of unwavering loyalty and martial perfection. Their sacrifice and valor became the stuff of legend, inspiring the Imperium's citizens and soldiers alike. Yet beneath the veneer of glory lay a sober recognition of the Empire's fragility and the relentless threats that still loomed. The Horus heresy left scars that transcended the physical battlefield. It was a crucible that reshaped the Custodes' identity, reinforcing their sacred mission but also demanding evolution. They were no longer merely guardians of a triumphant empire but sentinels of a wounded and uncertain future. Their story in the heresy is one of tragedy and triumph, of loyalty tested and ideals defended against overwhelming darkness. It is a testament to the enduring spirit of the Emperor's chosen, unyielding, sacred, and invincible, even in the face of cosmic betrayal. Yet, the heresy was only the beginning. The Imperium's future would demand more than courage and strength. It would require sacrifice, wisdom, and a willingness to confront the shadows within. The Adeptus Custodes stand ready, their golden eyes fixed upon the horizon as the eternal war for humanity's soul continues. The aftermath of the Horus heresy left the Imperium a shattered, trembling colossus, its bones cracked and its soul scarred. The Adeptus Custodes, having borne the brunt of the siege of Terra and the Emperor's final stand, emerged not only as victors but as the solemn custodians of an empire teetering on the edge of collapse. Their sacred charge, once defined by the protection of the Emperor in triumph, was irrevocably transformed into a ceaseless vigil over a realm in decay. This new mandate demanded a profound redefinition of purpose, duty, and identity for the Golden Host. With the Emperor's physical form mortally wounded and confined to the Golden Throne, the Custodes' role became more critical than ever. The Golden Throne was no longer just a seat of power, but a fragile nexus sustaining the Imperium's psychic and political order. To guard it was to guard the very existence of humanity's empire. The Custodes maintained unbroken watch, their golden armour a shining barrier against the tides of despair and darkness that sought to consume Terra and the Imperium. This eternal vigil was both a sacred honour and a crushing burden. In this era of post-heresy reconstruction, the Imperium's vast institutions struggled to regain cohesion. The Adeptus Mechanicus, Ecclesiarchy, Inquisition, and the fragmented Space Marine chapters each vied for influence and survival amid the ruins. The Custodes operated above these factions, their allegiance solely to the Emperor's vision, yet their influence was inevitably felt in the corridors of power. They became enforcers of order, arbiters of disputes, and silent overseers of the Imperium's fragile unity. Their presence was both a reassurance and a reminder of the Emperor's enduring authority. The Custodes also embraced a more active role in overseeing the defence of Terra and the Imperial Palace. The scars of the heresy had exposed vulnerabilities in the fortress world's defences and the complexity of threats it faced. The Golden Host expanded their responsibilities to include strategic planning, counterintelligence, and the management of elite security forces. Their expertise in both martial and political realms made them indispensable in navigating the perilous post-heresy landscape. This period also saw significant internal reforms within the Custodes order. The brutal lessons of the heresy highlighted the dangers of rigidity and isolation. While tradition remained sacrosanct, there was a growing recognition that adaptation was necessary. The Custodes began to refine their training, doctrine, and intelligence operations to better respond to emerging threats. They fostered closer cooperation with loyalist Space Marines and other Imperial agencies, though always maintaining their distinct identity and autonomy. The Custodes' relationship with the Space Marines was particularly complex. The shattered legions had been broken into smaller chapters, scattering their power across the galaxy. The Custodes, ever mindful of past betrayals, approached these new alliances with caution and solemn vigilance. Their role was not to command but to guide and protect the Imperium's most potent warriors, ensuring their loyalty and effectiveness in the ceaseless wars ahead. Their technology and armaments also saw careful enhancement. Advances in auramite alloys, weapons systems, and bio-enhancements were integrated with reverence for ancient craftsmanship. The Custodes' armor and weaponry evolved subtly, reflecting a balance between tradition and innovation necessary for survival in an increasingly hostile galaxy. These upgrades reinforced their reputation as the Imperium's finest warriors and guardians. Spiritually, the Custodes deepened their devotion to the Emperor's ideal, embracing a somber understanding of sacrifice and endurance. They became living symbols of the Imperium's resilience, their golden presence a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. Their rituals and ceremonies grew more solemn, emphasizing the weight of their eternal duty and the memory of those who had fallen. The Custodes also expanded their role as judges and executors of justice within the Imperium. In a realm rife with corruption, heresy, and rebellion, their impartial and merciless judgment was both feared and respected. They dealt swiftly with threats to the Emperor's vision, serving as the last line of enforcement when other institutions faltered or wavered. This judicial authority, while necessary, further isolated them from other Imperial factions but underscored their unique and vital function. Despite their elevated status, the Custodes remained bound by their sacred oath to protect the Emperor and humanity above all else. This unwavering loyalty required constant sacrifice. Their immortal lifespans and near-superhuman abilities meant that they endured centuries of watching an empire in slow decay. A slow, grinding decline that tested their resolve and spirit. They were witnesses to the Imperium's glories and its horrors, guardians against both external threats and internal rot. The Custodes' new mandate was both a continuation of their ancient duty and a transformation in response to an altered galaxy. They were no longer merely the Emperor's bodyguards, but the custodians of an empire's fragile heart and soul. Their vigilance extended beyond the physical defense of terror to the spiritual and political preservation of mankind's dominion. Yet this eternal vigilance came at a cost. The Custodes grappled with isolation, the burden of perfection, and the weight of watching humanity falter. Their story in this era is one of solemn endurance, a relentless battle against despair and entropy, fought not with grand armies but with unyielding discipline and sacred purpose. As the Imperium descended into the age of the Imperium, the Custodes remained unbroken. Their golden armour shone bright against the encroaching darkness, their blades ever ready to defend the Emperor's dream. But even as they stood guard, the galaxy around them grew darker still. New threats emerged: Xenos, heretics, and the unrelenting tide of chaos. The Custodes' new mandate would demand more than ever: vigilance without rest, sacrifice without question, and an unshakable faith in a vision whose cost was eternal. The millennia that followed the Horus heresy plunged the Imperium into a dark and uncertain epoch, known as the Long Night of the Imperium. This era was marked by relentless wars, political decay, and the slow erosion of once mighty institutions. The Adeptus Custodes, once the flawless guardians of a burgeoning empire, found themselves standing at a crossroads, their sacred charge burdened with new threats and an evolving galaxy that challenged every precept of their ancient order. During this prolonged era of turmoil, the Imperium's vast domains fractured further under the strain of Xenos incursions, insurrections, and the insidious spread of chaos cults. Terror itself, the eternal heart of humanity, became a symbol of resilience amid decay, but was never immune to the shadows creeping ever closer. The Custodes, bound by duty and honour, remained steadfast sentinels, but the scale of threats they faced began to overwhelm even their legendary prowess. The Long Night tested the limits of the Custodes' numbers and capabilities. Their small cadre could not be everywhere at once. Their influence, though potent, was restricted by the sprawling complexity of the Imperium. They focused on safeguarding the Golden Throne and terror, but the ripples of instability threatened to reach even the most sacred ground. This paradox of unparalleled guardianship and limited reach defined much of their struggle in this epoch. One of the most profound challenges was the shifting political landscape within the Imperium. The High Lords of Terror wielded immense power, but their decisions often reflected competing agendas and fractured loyalties. The Custodes' role as impartial enforcers became increasingly complex as they navigated court intrigues, power struggles, and the rise of bureaucratic stagnation. Their intervention was sometimes resented, their judgments questioned, yet their authority remained absolute when it came to the Emperor's safety. During the Long Night, the Custodes faced unprecedented threats from within. Rogue psykers, cult uprisings, and the ever-present menace of chaos infiltrated the palace and its surroundings. These internal dangers required the Golden Host to act not only as warriors, but as investigators, judges, and executors. Their methods were swift and uncompromising, reinforcing the fragile order that sustained the Imperium's core. The Custodes also encountered new enemies beyond the palace walls: Xenos raiders, particularly the insidious Dark Eldar and the ever-looming Tyranids, probed the defences of Terra and the surrounding systems. The Golden Host's engagements with these foes, though rare, were fierce and decisive. They embodied the Imperium's refusal to yield, yet these battles also highlighted the limits of even their invincible might against the vast and varied threats of the galaxy. This era saw the Custodes adopt more nuanced strategies. They began to delegate greater responsibilities to allied forces such as the Sisters of Silence, elite stormtrooper regiments, and loyalist Space Marine chapters. Cooperation became a necessity, albeit always under the watchful eye of the Golden Host. This shift marked a subtle but significant evolution in their doctrine, blending isolation with pragmatic alliances to uphold their sacred charge. The Long Night also exposed fractures within the Custodes' own ranks. Centuries of vigilance bred weariness and a quiet questioning of purpose among some custodians. The weight of immortality and endless duty weighed heavily. Debates about the Order's future, the necessity of adaptation, and the balance between tradition and change simmered beneath their polished golden helmets. These internal tensions, though carefully concealed, foreshadowed future transformations. Yet, despite these challenges, the Custodes remained a beacon of order in an unravelling galaxy. Their sacrifices and unyielding discipline inspired the faithful and reminded the Imperium that even amid decay, the Emperor's light endured. Their presence in the shadows was a constant warning to enemies and a solace to allies, embodying the eternal struggle between order and chaos. The Long Night's turning point arrived with the increasing threat of chaos incursions, notably the rise of demon princes and the spread of warp storms that isolated key Imperial systems. The Custodes found themselves confronting not only physical enemies, but metaphysical horrors that tested their mental and spiritual fortitude. Their psychic resilience was pushed to its limits as they battled corruption threatening to undermine the Emperor's throne from within. This epoch also saw the rise of new Custodes artifacts and relics, symbols of hope and reminders of sacrifice. These items, imbued with ancient technology and the Emperor's blessing, became rallying points during dark times, reinforcing the Golden Host's sacred mission. Their crafting and safeguarding became a vital aspect of the Custodes' evolving culture. The Long Night was not merely an age of decline, but a crucible forging the future of the Adeptus Custodes. Their ability to adapt while maintaining their sacred code was tested as never before. The lessons learned during these centuries would shape their response to the galaxy's ever-growing threats, and ensure the continuation of their eternal vigil. And yet, the question loomed larger than ever. Could the Custodes preserve the Emperor's vision in a universe growing darker and more hostile? Or would even their sacred shield falter beneath the relentless weight of time and conflict? The answer remains shrouded in the mists of fate, awaiting the next chapter in the eternal war for humanity's soul. In the grim darkness of the far future, the Adeptus Custodes endure as the living embodiment of the Emperor's eternal will. Their legacy, forged through millennia of sacrifice, war, and unwavering devotion, defines not only their identity, but the very heart of the Imperium itself. As the galaxy plunges deeper into chaos and decay, the Golden Host stands as a sacred bulwark, unyielding, sacred, and invincible, yet ever burdened by the weight of their timeless charge. The modern Imperium is a vast, fractious entity, beset on all sides by threats both mortal and metaphysical. Xenos empires such as the Necrons and the Tau challenge humanity's dominion, while the forces of chaos spread corruption and madness. Within this maelstrom, the Custodes operate with a singular purpose: to protect the Emperor, the Golden Throne, and the legacy of humanity. Their vigilance extends beyond Terra's walls, encompassing covert missions across the galaxy that few even suspect. Despite their isolation, the Custodes maintain close ties to select Imperial factions. They collaborate with the Inquisition to root out heresy, coordinate with the Adeptus Mechanicus to safeguard lost technologies, and guide loyalist Space Marine chapters in crucial battles. Yet, their authority remains supreme when it comes to matters concerning the Emperor and the Golden Throne. This dual role as both warriors and political arbiters places them at the apex of Imperial power and intrigue. The Custodes' training and technology have evolved to meet the demands of a galaxy in perpetual war. Advances in auramite metallurgy, psychic shielding, and bioenhancements have been integrated with their timeless martial traditions. Each custodian is a living masterpiece, physically augmented, mentally fortified, and spiritually prepared for battles that span from brutal close combat to clandestine operations in the shadows of Imperial politics. Their armour gleams with an otherworldly radiance, a symbol of hope and fear. The guardian spears they wield are not mere weapons but extensions of their will, capable of cleaving through the toughest armour and dispelling psychic threats. Their combat prowess remains unmatched, their discipline absolute, and their resolve unbreakable. The Golden Host fights not for glory but for survival, bearing the burden of humanity's fate with solemn grace. Yet the Custodes are not without their contradictions. Their near immortality and elevated status breed a stoicism that borders on detachment. They often appear aloof, enigmatic, and inscrutable to those they serve alongside. This distance fosters both reverence and resentment among other Imperial forces. The Custodes exist apart, simultaneously revered as saviours and feared as relentless arbiters of the Emperor's will. Their role extends beyond the battlefield. The Custodes oversee the security of the Imperial Palace with a vigilance unmatched by any other force. Their presence wards against assassination attempts, sabotage, and psychic incursions. They serve as judges and executioners, dispensing justice where the Imperium's bureaucratic machinery falters. Their decisions are swift, their judgment absolute, reinforcing the precarious order that sustains humanity's empire. Philosophically, the Custodes embody the eternal tension between duty and sacrifice. They accept a life devoid of personal ambition or legacy, dedicating themselves wholly to a cause greater than any individual. Their perfection is both a blessing and a curse, a pinnacle of human potential tempered by the loss of freedom and individuality. This duality shapes their culture and informs their every action. The legacy of the Custodes is also reflected in their influence on the Adeptus Astartes. While the Space Marines are humanity's angelic warriors, the Custodes are its golden saints, exemplars of what the Emperor's gene crafting and vision could achieve. Their relationship with the Space Marines is complex, marked by both cooperation and subtle rivalry. The Custodes serve as mentors and overseers, ensuring that the Astartes remain loyal and effective in the face of the Imperium's endless wars. In recent decades, the Custodes have faced new challenges that test their endurance and adaptability. The rise of the Primaris Space Marines, the resurgence of ancient Xenos threats, and the growing instability of the Warp have forced the Golden Host to re-evaluate aspects of their doctrine and strategy. Though rooted in millennia-old tradition, they recognize the necessity of evolution to meet the Imperium's ever-changing landscape. Despite these pressures, the Custodes remain unshaken. Their golden armour continues to shine as a beacon amidst the darkness, their blades swift and unerring. They are the Emperor's eternal shield, unyielding in resolve, sacred in purpose, and invincible in battle. Their legacy is not merely one of war but of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest times humanity's light endures through sacrifice, vigilance, and unwavering faith. And so the Adeptus Custodes stand, eternal sentinels at the heart of an empire in peril, watching the stars with eyes that have seen the rise and fall of worlds, ready to face the endless night. The Emperor's will is their command, their vigilance, humanity's salvation. Beneath the radiant golden armour and unyielding discipline of the Adeptus Custodes lies a web of secrets, mysteries, and forbidden truths that few within the Imperium dare to contemplate. The Golden Host, for all its visible splendour and martial prowess, is also a keeper of knowledge that borders on the heretical, custodians not only of the Emperor's safety, but of arcane wisdom that could unravel the very fabric of the Imperium, or secure its salvation. The origins of the Custodes themselves are shrouded in myth and half-truths. While it is known that they were created from the Emperor's own genetic material and designed to be his perfect protectors, the full extent of their genesis remains hidden. Ancient records suggest experimentation far beyond current understanding, involving lost technologies and rituals that blend science with the warp's elusive energies. Some scholars speculate that the Custodes embody a fusion of human and something otherworldly, a synthesis of biology and psychic force that transcends simple classification. This fusion grants them abilities that appear miraculous, accelerated healing, near immortality, and psychic resistance that borders on immunity. Yet the true nature of these powers is a closely guarded secret. The Custodes themselves speak little of their origins, bound by oath and tradition to maintain silence. Their creation is a paradox, a divine gift wrapped in forbidden knowledge, a living weapon forged at the edges of acceptable science. Their relationship with the Emperor is equally enigmatic. Though they serve him without question, the depth of their bond transcends mere loyalty. Some ancient texts hint at a psychic connection, a shared consciousness that allows the Emperor to perceive the Custodes as extensions of his own will. This connection may explain their unparalleled devotion and insight, but it also raises unsettling questions about autonomy, free will, and the true nature of their servitude. Within the Imperial Palace lie hidden vaults and chambers accessible only to the highest-ranking Custodes. These repositories contain relics and artifacts of immense power, ancient weapons, forbidden technologies, and arcane devices from the Age of Terror's forgotten past. Some items are said to hold the key to humanity's salvation, others carry curses that could doom entire worlds. The Custodes guard these secrets jealously, aware that their misuse could bring ruin not only upon the Imperium, but upon the fabric of reality itself. Rumours persist of Custodes who have delved too deeply into forbidden knowledge, disappearing into the shadowy recesses of the palace or beyond the veil of the warp. Such cases are whispered of as tragic lessons, reminders of the peril inherent in their sacred charge. The Custodes' code forbids such exploration, yet the tension between duty and curiosity remains an undercurrent within their order. Another mystery concerns the true extent of the Custodes' role beyond terror. While known primarily as the Emperor's guardians, there are hints that small covert contingents operate far across the galaxy, executing missions so secret that even high-ranking Imperial authorities remain unaware. These operatives engage in sabotage, assassination, and intelligence gathering, shaping events from the shadows to preserve the Imperium's stability. Their existence blurs the line between protector and puppet master. The Custodes also maintain a delicate balance with other Imperial factions, especially the Inquisition and the Adeptus Mechanicus. Their cooperation is vital but fraught with mistrust. Each faction guards its own secrets jealously, and the Custodes' inscrutable nature fuels speculation about hidden agendas and untold power. This shadow play of alliances and rivalries forms a hidden war within the Imperium's labyrinthine bureaucracy. Perhaps most haunting are the forbidden truths related to the Emperor himself. The Custodes are among the few who understand the full scope of his condition, immortal yet trapped within the Golden Throne, sustaining the Imperium through a psychic beacon that exacts a terrible toll. Some whispers speak of ancient rituals and technologies the Custodes guard to prolong this existence, while others hint at dire consequences should the Emperor's essence be disturbed. Their knowledge is a sacred burden, a secret that could shatter the Imperium if revealed. These mysteries feed into the Custodes' solemn worldview, a blend of awe, fear, and unwavering resolve. They are both custodians of light and guardians against the darkness that knowledge itself can unleash. Their silence is not merely obedience, but a shield, protecting humanity from truths too vast and terrible to bear. Yet, the tension remains. The Custodes must constantly navigate the perilous boundary between revelation and concealment, between the preservation of order and the danger of knowledge. Their sacred duty demands vigilance not only against external enemies, but against the corruption that secrets can breed within their own ranks. The Golden Host's legacy is therefore dual, shining as humanity's ultimate defenders, while lurking as shadowy keepers of forbidden wisdom. Their story is as much about what they protect from the Imperium's gaze as what they fight on the battlefield. In this balance lies their paradox, the unyielding sentinels of order who must guard not only the Emperor, but the dangerous truths that threaten to unravel the very empire they serve. The Custodes stand eternal, their golden eyes watching over a galaxy riddled with secrets, ready to defend, ready to conceal, ready to sacrifice all for a future forever uncertain. In the endless expanse of the 41st millennium, where stars burn cold and empires crumble beneath the weight of their own hubris, the Adeptus Custodes endure as eternal sentinels, unyielding in resolve, sacred in purpose, and invincible in their solemn duty. Their vigil is not merely a task, but a profound existential mandate that transcends time, space, and mortal understanding. The Golden Host embodies the paradox of perfection and sacrifice, a living testament to humanity's relentless struggle against oblivion. To contemplate the Custodes is to confront the nature of loyalty itself, absolute, unwavering, and eternal. They serve not out of desire or ambition, but because they are bound by a sacred covenant forged in the Emperor's vision. Their identities are subsumed by this duty, their individuality sacrificed on the altar of a cause greater than any single life. This self-effacement is both their strength and their eternal burden. In a universe rife with chaos and corruption, their purity is a beacon, yet it isolates them in an ocean of shadow. The philosophical weight of their existence lies in this tension between perfection and impermanence. Though near immortal and superhuman, the Custodes are not gods. They are guardians of a fragile dream, keepers of a legacy whose future is never guaranteed. Their eternal vigilance is a vigil against entropy, against the decay of order, the erosion of faith, and the encroaching darkness that threatens to consume all. This vigilance demands sacrifice of every kind. Time itself becomes a crucible, as the Custodes witness the rise and fall of civilizations, the deaths of friends and foes, and the endless cycles of war that define the Imperium. Their unchanging presence contrasts sharply with the mutable, often tragic fate of humanity. They are anchors in a storm, yet even anchors can be worn down by relentless waves. Moreover, the Custodes' sacred charge raises profound questions about free will, destiny, and the nature of sacrifice. Bound by genetic design, psychic bonds, and sacred oaths, they navigate a path dictated by the Emperor's vision yet fraught with moral and existential dilemmas. Their near-divine perfection is both gift and prison, a condition that challenges the very notion of individuality and choice. Within this framework, the Adeptus Custodes serve as a mirror reflecting humanity's highest aspirations and darkest fears. They represent the ultimate expression of order, discipline, and sacrifice, standing in stark opposition to the chaos and despair that saturate the galaxy. Yet their story also warns of the costs inherent in such perfection: the isolation, the loss of self, and the unending burden of duty. Their eternal vigil is a philosophical testament to the paradox of guardianship. To protect, one must relinquish. To endure, one must forsake. To be invincible, one must embrace vulnerability in the form of sacrifice. The Custodes embody this paradox with solemn grace, their golden armour a symbol not just of power but of perpetual sacrifice. In the grand tapestry of the Imperium, they are both threads of gold and shadows of solemnity, woven into a narrative of triumph and tragedy, hope and despair. Their presence assures that the Emperor's dream, though battered and besieged, still flickers in the darkness. Yet that flame demands constant tending, a sacrifice without end. As the stars burn cold and the galaxy turns ever darker, the Adeptus Custodes stand, watch, unyielding, sacred, invincible. Their story is not one of victory or defeat, but of eternal commitment, an endless vigil against the encroaching void. In the final reckoning, their greatest battle is not fought with blade or spear, but with unbreakable will and unwavering faith. They are the Emperor's eternal shield, they are humanity's unyielding light, they are the vigil that never ends.